guessed already. Let's go.
Exactly.
I
All right.
don't even know what movie you
So
get.
I guess we could start this off with what is your favorite horror movie, Lunar? You have to say one, and it can be silly, it can be scary, it could be whatever. But what is your favorite horror movie?
That's a good question. I don't really watch horror
Yes,
movies.
and
Uh,
the,
uh,
more or less, I guess, instead of wanting to think of it as like your favorite horror movies, like what is a movie in somewhat of that kind of genre that you either reminisce about or you wouldn't mind going back to rewatch it from time to time.
oh man, I don't know the name of the movie because it's awful. It had the girl from oh no, the girl from Twilight was in it, and there was sunflowers and stuff in there. I watched that movie with my siblings all the time, and we got to the point that we actually got desensitized, scared, not scared of it, but it was just funny memories of us just making fun of it. What's the name of the movie?
Was it
Hmm.
Midsummer?
With sunflowers and the girl from Twilight. What's the name of that movie? The Messengers. The
Oh,
Messengers.
okay.
It
Oh,
was
okay.
the hilarious. I love how I googled like saying sunflowers and the girl from Twilight horror movie and it
I
found
mean, at
it.
least it showed up.
If it pops up, then it pops up. I don't know.
That's fair. I love Google.
All right. This week we are talking about a movie called The Fourth Kind. It was a movie. But no, it was a
Wow. Okay.
yeah, right. It was a
Well,
it's
before
a pseudo documentary that
well
So
before we fully dive into this, want to make it clear also to the audience who are listening to this, if this is a movie you want to watch beforehand, I fully recommend it
there
yeah
are spoilers.
because well, yes, we're going to talk about spoilers, but there's also like a twist. I'm going to talk, not really a twist, but basically like the main thing behind the film that I'm going to explain later. If you want to go into this essentially blind, please do. If you do find a outlet we used or I was able to buy this movie off of YouTube Movies, but if you're either you have a DVD of it or you're able to get it digitally, you want to listen to it, I highly recommend either good headphones or earbuds because you have sections of the movie where the audio will be split between the left and the right. It's not it's not anything wrong with the film itself. It's how they set up a lot of the stuff
yeah
of doing like whenever you dive into it, but like audio wise, they do like a you get audio from the left and then from the right. It overall helps, but I fully do recommend if you do want to watch this movie beforehand, please do because we are essentially going to spoil a lot of things about it. Sorry about that. You can continue.
you were like, I want people to watch it before they listen to it. That's not a
Well,
bad idea. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
one
yeah.
of those it's one of those things, honestly, because
Always gotta get those disclaimers out when you first do something. It's like, hey guys.
well, it's not really a disclaimer. It's like one thing I'm going to talk about later on. Sort of once you know about it, changes how you will view the footage, like the movie itself,
Yeah.
because it's in that whole category of mockumentary style,
Yeah, it's
or as people describe it as a mockumentary, where if
well they
I
call it
guess if
a pseudo documentary because a mockumentary is it's based off of real events. They're just reenacting. This is a pseudo documentary where it's the same idea as a mockumentary except the events did not happen.
well the
I,
pseudo document. No, I think you might have that reversed actually. In all
I'll read
honesty,
the
because
Wikipedia definition. A pseudo documentary or fake documentary is a film or video production that takes the form of style of a documentary film, but does not portray real events. Yeah.
okay, yeah, I was more or less just more associated with the mockumentary like nomenclature for it, which was essentially like your Grave Encounters, your Blair Witch Project, where they tried to present stuff in a realistic fashion.
Yeah.
In a sense, and this movie can also you can have that sort of label placed on it too, based on how they're presenting it. So,
Yeah. But
because usually whenever you hear like
mhm.
especially documentary associated with it, it's like okay, there's some portions of realism in it because documentary. What does that mean? Like you're documenting stuff that's I didn't know there was a difference.
Yeah. So in this case, like the events did not happen, and I'll sort of start from the beginning, and it'll sort of make more sense. This is Crankshaft podcast. We do horror. We do basically any media that just involves horror. But today we have with us Fengar Sensei.
Wait, you're telling me that movie wasn't real?
We have we have Caveman
To answer your question, yes.
and a special guest, Lunar OO Kitten, but we just call her Lunar.
I'm only here to fix technology issues for some reason.
And apparently it works, so no,
She's our super
I'll
glue.
just take it.
I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what they're talking about.
You'll be fine.
I've been kidnapped.
So
You'll be
one of the things about this movie is they do is they'll take what appears to be actual recordings of these events and they'll put them side by side with the movie recordings. Now both are fake, but it is a good storytelling device because it pulls you into the immersion of believing that the event could hold true and that the stuff is actually happening in Nome, Alaska. Nome. Unfortunately, not the cool Nome, but, maybe they'll rename the town after gnomes.
Yes,
Yeah.
because especially right off the bat, you have Mila Jovovich, who plays basically the leading role in this film for Abby Tyler. A lot of the presentation they do in this film starts with her walking up to the camera, and they put her essentially on like a moving platform that just spins around just to give that nice effect in the background. But it presents everything as we are doing a recreation of archival footage about this event that took place in Nome, Alaska. From the names that they use, we'll have a little bracket that says alias on it because they don't want to use the actual person's name, to a lot of the interview footage that will have certain names and addresses muted out. So it treats all this stuff as if it's a realistic thing that took place, but for the protection of the people involved, you had to change names, not really change locations because it ties into the end why they kept the name of Nome, Alaska, but it's just overall treating this as here's why you will see side-by-side footage, archival footage usually on the left, our recreational stuff on the right, which is why there's that audio split.
Yep.
As well as certain recordings, either police interview recordings or personal recorders being played back as a means of here's the archival recording of this interview and all this stuff going on. So in terms of a lot of different type of mockumentaries, pseudo documentary stuff, again calling back to Grave Encounters or the Blair Witch Project, this does a better, it takes it a step further. Instead of saying here's the actual footage that we've spliced together and we're going to call it a movie, this outright tells you this is just going to be a reenactment, but we will show you the stuff that we are doing side by side as what's going on.
Yeah. So we started off the movie with that interview side by side with the actress experiencing. So like we'll start off with the main character herself, Abby. So it starts off with like she's getting an interview or a what was it, deep sleep regression is what I believe they're called. They also call them hypnosis, but I believe it's deep sleep regression. Um,
It is a form of hypnosis, yes, as a means. In a lot of cases, hypnosis in of itself is not really seen as definitive proof for a lot of things. Not necessarily the topic that we're talking about with the fourth kind, which essentially is just about like the ideas of alien abduction, but hypnosis usually gets brought in to help people deal with trauma that they either have locked away somewhere or essentially like regressed memories of trauma and stuff. So
Yeah, like
you will get cases like that of people's like, I need to figure out, what exactly my mind decided. Let's not remember this right now, or let's lock this away of some traumatic event that took place. So in that regards, yeah, she is essentially having a hypnosis regression session with our second hypnotist therapist person in the movie is Abel,
one of her colleagues.
because you know, essentially her colleague, probably like her peer, but the whole motivation right off the bat is for Abby Tyler. Her husband has been murdered, and she's trying to find out who exactly murdered her husband. They were both, hypnotist therapists working in the town of Nome, Alaska. He got murdered, and the time frame of this movie was about 2 months ago. So, with the setting of the movie being in the year 2000, October, what would that be, like August,
Yeah.
I believe?
I think she said it was in August when he was murdered.
Yes. Yeah, it would be in August that he was murdered, and she's still trying to figure out who exactly broke into their house and murdered him.
Who don't kill them?
That is her motivation. That is her motivation. That is why she's still pushing forward with this study that they both worked on, even though, as the police department constantly says, it's like, we already solved this, we explained this to you, and she's like, no, I know what I saw, type mentality. You guys are lying to me. Her whole thing is, I remember him getting stabbed in the stomach. That's what killed him. That is the main motivation overall on why she is pushing forward, still doing these therapy sessions with the residents of this town in Nome, Alaska, because there is some sort of connection going on with what's going on in this town and her husband murdered.
I figure you had something to add on to that.
I was just gonna say I still can't believe that the movie convinced me that there's a place called Alaska.
It was Alaska all along. I can't believe it.
Of course it was fake.
You said in Alaska and you don't even make a mention of Balto. How dare you?
He's not a true wolf.
So,
How? Don't you ruin my childhood like that.
I
so,
was talking to Fingar.
so after that point, after she's had her own hypnotism, she returns home and go. So like Gnome, they definitely point out through the visuals that you only can get there by flying, and it is in the outskirts of nowhere. And she goes to work, and of course, like Cayman said, they're in the middle of nowhere, and she returns back to being like a therapist for the community. And when she's doing small interviews with some of these people, she starts to notice that the people she interviews have all seen an owl out their window, and the owl is possibly the reason why they're waking up at 3 a.m. every morning.
Is it like Mothman but Owlman this time?
Owl man.
Well, the type of owl that they show, I believe, is considered a barn owl.
Yeah.
Yes,
Does
the
Alaska
type of
have owls?
owl.
I'm pretty sure that Alaska has owls.
It would not surprise me if they do, but that's like one of the other main motifs going on to be fair, if you've ever seen a barn owl before, one of the biggest like characteristics about them is how their face looks. Because yeah, they have regular sized eyes, but a lot of the feathers and stuff around their eyes are a bit darkened, giving them that sort of predatory or larger eyes than compared to their face. This movie, there is a lot of stuff that we can explain later on, but it deals with a lot of theories, superstitions, going back however so, even to like kind of essentially like a lot of mythologies and stuff going around aspects. Owls being one of the biggest ones so far.
I mean, they are like a creature of wisdom and like secrets. By the way, guys, fun
Yeah.
fact: there are 10 species of owls in Alaska. I found out.
Yeah,
I
there
mean,
you
doesn't
go.
surprise me. I've heard that apparently kids in Alaska, like elementary kids, have to like group up because they get attacked by predatory birds in the morning.
I'm about to say,
Yeah.
and birds are picking up kids. It's like, oh my god, this
No,
got a little bit
that's
serious.
another thing. Nah, that's just the Thunderbird. That's something else we can talk about later.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
we
no,
can
like
talk about that later.
even from my own experience, whenever I used to work security at night and whatnot, I've seen at least a great horned owl twice.
That's
I
terrifying.
have some photos I can pull up later. They were honestly pretty cool. They didn't mess with me or anything.
No,
It's
no,
just,
no, no.
walking.
No. Now, me personally, because I'm superstitious, if I'm at night and I'm by myself trying to go somewhere and I see this owl, I'm like,
You
There's
ask
two
it.
things
You
that's-
ask it for its phone number so it can take you out on a dinner date.
no, I asked, like, do you come bearing misfortune, or are you just here looking for food?
Do you
Because
bring
either
Taco
way, I don't
Bell
want to be
and
the I don't want to be the
box
food.
wine? Then we can maybe have some sort
Ooh.
of relations later.
If you don't know Winnie the Pooh, get out of my face.
Who?
I mean, either way, it was still a fun experience because one incident was just, landed up on a tree branch. It's like, oh, okay, that's pretty neat. Another time, just driving a golf cart and it just lands on one of the railings nearby, and it's like, all right. Granted, like 2 separate days when these incidents happened, but it was still
Imagine it was the
overall
same day.
pretty neat.
Oh,
Oh,
Being looking
I
after you.
would have just quit that job right then and there.
I
It's like you were trying to.
I actually just remember what I was going to say though.
Mhm.
Another reason, this is going back to the hypnosis thing. I was because I had studied psychology a little bit.
I mean, I'm psycho. Does that count?
But
You're something.
another reason why people like do go through like hypnosis things was because of the fact that like you were mentioning, they repress like memories and events, and usually when people are put under as a hypnotist or hypnosis, I mean, usually it brings out their like subconscious memories, and like the subconscious is what they're bringing out in a sense. And,
Yeah.
and hence like why even if like you forget like years ago, like after like years of having an experience, like I've seen like people saw an adult under hypnosis where like they recall memories with perfect clarity from when they were like a child, because like the subconscious memory holds so much more than the conscious one, and it's like usually a lot like then and that was like really fascinating, and like and so that's why I really like the use of the hypnosis in this movie. Though I will say it took me a while. Like it was right after I think the third hypnosis scene where it finally took me to realize what the movie's about.
It was 41 minutes into the film, and you went, "Wait, this movie's about this?"
It was like, this movie's about aliens. It's like, no, with a name called The Fourth Kind, I wouldn't expect it to be about
No.
aliens.
The fourth kind is just basically the different type of Pokemons.
Yeah, see, no, like I thought it was about like some freaking
Like Wendigo or
crazy ass.
something?
Yeah, I thought it was like Wendigo or like some crazy ass owl demon.
Were you thinking of like Missing Link kind of fourth kind thing when you heard that?
I don't know. I thought it was some kind of monster.
We
mean, aliens
explained this in the
technically-
last podcast.
I mean, technically,
I know. I slept since then apparently.
It's a big brain moment.
You know, your
But it was
subconscious held
great.
it, but your conscious didn't. You know, as we were saying, you
Yeah, so
hold more information.
we'd have to put you under hypnosis and then be like, oh yes, now I remember.
Well, in all honesty, that sort of worked out with the viewing experience because that's how the movie treated itself. Of the minute you found out what kind of film we were watching, then it just turned into the film had that same understanding of now the audience is aware of what exactly we are watching. Now we can keep pushing forward to what we want this movie to actually be about.
Yeah. So going back just a little bit, so she does since she is a therapist, since she also notices that these people keep waking up at 3 a.m., she wants to try.
The witching hour.
To
Yep,
try
3:33.
hypnosis with one of her patients. So she does hypnosis on a man named Tommy, and during the hypnosis, there's a moment where he just starts freaking out and starts screaming and starts saying the owl wasn't real all along, and something opened his door. And he's like screaming and flailing around
Hey.
the office.
I'm just saying though, science told me aliens can't open wooden doors, so he needs to get a new door.
And
Joke's on you, they're all made of wood.
Oh my gosh.
so, and she's like, "Do you want to talk about it?" He's like, "No, I'm just gonna leave. I'm just gonna leave. Goodbye." And she's like, "Just tell me."
Yeah, everything's fine. It's not. I didn't see anything. Don't worry about it. I just need to go home. And that's. I want to say technically that's one of the first essential scenes they have right there, where they show the side by side archival and the reenactment footage.
Yeah, it was the first one besides the very opening.
And I guess something else I'm going to fully reiterate towards the end too. If you are going to watch this movie, put on subtitles because everyone loves to whisper for some reason in this
Yeah.
film.
It's an ASMR film. Look at the whisper in your ears.
Apparently, because like the archival stuff, like footage they show, it's perfectly fine. You can understand people. The reenactment stuff, especially with Mila Jovovich, apparently how she wanted to portray her character is just everything is just whispering. So without the captions being on, we probably would not have understood anything that was being said at them.
I'm just saying though, whispering actually is supposed to, because you keep talking about like the conscious and subconscious. Technically, the whispering is actually supposed to tingle that subconscious a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So
Listen,
It tingled me into annoyance. All right.
I put your Jack.
Yeah, it tingled me into wondering why the fuck they couldn't afford a boomstick.
Every thing just had to be in whispers.
So after that, he like leaves the office, and she's like, "All right, I'm gonna listen to some tapes," and then she sleeps, and then she gets a call in the middle of the night where it's like, "Tommy went AWOL. He's asking for you, Abby. You need to get there," and he's just like, and she in a panic just comes, and he's like holding his family like hostage.
In the kitchen.
Yeah, in the kitchen. And then he
Did they show what time all that took place?
No.
Or was it just supposed to be implied it was in the middle of the night? Because
It was in the middle of the night. It wasn't 3 o'clock.
okay, well,
I remember.
one of
There was,
the
like,
other things I
they
just
showed
had to
the-
ask.
Yeah, no, I remember they showed the time, but they didn't. But it was not 3.
Yeah, no, it was like that
Oh.
evening. He did not want to go back to bed. Like I think they were having dinner or something like that, and he just snapped.
And so
Okay, because that was always a constant thing of like all this weird stuff kept happening around 3:33, which again, witching hour goes into a lot of superstitious stuff.
Technically, 3 isn't a very important number in supernatural means, but also you could almost say scientifically 3 is a good number too, because I remember my mom was into numerology and 3 was a very strong, like, powerful number.
It is, but that's why whenever 3:33 shows up, or that's why you quote unquote the paranormal things happen happen around 333. It's called the witching hour. Religiously, that's because, the demons are just like demons, all the negative energies are just wanting to spite, the Holy Trinity, three, all that stuff.
Mhm.
So it's a lot of superstitious things of you would think that should be seen as a good thing, but a lot of the demons and evil entities and stuff will start doing things around 333 to spite
Yeah.
the religious figures, thus the witching hour. A fun fact right there.
But at this point, he becomes a statistic as being part of the Family Annihilator Squad.
He added him and his whole family
Fantastic.
into the history books.
And the sheriff we're introduced to at this point. Do you remember his name? Or am I going to have to quickly look it up?
His alias is Sheriff August.
There we go.
Ironic, but to me, he is probably one of the best characters in this film, and is one of the more grounded, because he literally gives off the feeling of I am too tired for this shit.
Yeah, he's like your everyman stand-in.
I mean, personally, I find that great, but it's still just like all the stuff going on around him. He's just like, explain to me what's going on. All right, here's an explanation for what's going on. Bullshit.
So he pulls her to like an interview, and he's just like, "What'd you do? You were the last person to talk with him. Why did he ask for you?" And she's just like, "He saw something. I think it was aliens." He's like, "Cut the crap. What did you tell him? How did you influence him to kill his family?" She's like, "Nah, you haven't even found my husband's killer yet." And he's like, "I told you what it was." And
So we
she's
already
just like,
explained
"No,
to you
it's
exactly what's going
aliens."
on. Well, she doesn't bring up something like that yet. That's only after the second incident.
Yeah.
Because as far as he's just trying to figure out, it's like he just murdered his whole family and himself. You were the last person to interact with him. He had a violent outburst at one of your sessions, and you didn't inform the police department about this.
Yeah,
Did you do something to influence him to do this?
Yeah, like he tried to insinuate, in a sense, that her hypnosis is what caused his psychological break.
I mean, kind of did, if you think about it, but not in the way he's thinking of it.
Well, in theory, it makes sense what's going on. It's like you had a session with him. You did something to trigger a violent outburst, and now him, his wife, and his two kids are dead.
You know what happened?
Was it some?
He had a session 0 D&D game, and it had the same look as Uncle. It just went off the rail.
Listen, my session 0 went great. What you're talking about?
I heard some different things too.
Oh, we were talking about the session before everyone groups up thing.
Yeah.
That was a little traumatic.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, I heard some things.
So, yeah. So he ends up killing his whole family, and
Subtle, love it.
she just goes home and is like, I did nothing wrong. It was not me. It was whatever this was.
It was them darn aliens that done did this.
At this point, Abel comes and checks on her and was just like, "Hey, you okay?"
No. She made a recording, like after, and she was like made a recording saying like I feel guilty, in a way, and like was just going over like her notes, kind of like voice notes for herself.
Yeah, thinking that it might be, thinking it might be connected with why no one's sleeping well.
Mm-hmm.
And then she goes to work, and Abel comes and is like, "Hey, you okay?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm fine. This is all I got right now, though, so I can't take a sabbatical like you keep telling me to." And he's like, "No, you should actually take one." And she's just like, "No, it's fine. And she hands her assistant the recording she did the night before, and it's just like, hey, can you transcribe this? And she goes to do a second therapy session, and she's just like, all right, so what's going on? And I forget this other character's name. Scott? Yeah, it was Scott.
Yes.
So Scott and his wife are just sort of sitting there, and they're like, well, you should put him under too. Abby's just like, well, maybe I shouldn't, because like what happened yesterday, and they're like, no, we can handle it. We're both here. We're both adults. We have consent.
It wasn't necessarily the fact of, like, we can handle this, but it was like, we heard what happened to Tommy. Gnome, as they're implying, is somewhat of a small community. Make a reference of, this is the the second suicide in 2 months, referencing back to her husband. Again, just peppering little things here and there. It's like, this is second suicide. What happened? What happened to Tommy? What did he see exactly? He's like, can't talk about it, And I was like, I forget what that's called, but with the Hippocratic
it's like parent or patient
doctor-patient privacy. Either way, excuse me.
But it's still just in that aspect of, he's dead now. Please tell us what's going on, because she made a mention to all these other patients too. It's like, a lot. You're not the only one mentioning owls going on whenever you're trying to sleep and all that stuff. And with Scott, after hearing this information, it's just like, all right, I want you to hypnotize me. I have to know what I'm forgetting. I have to know what really is going on in that aspect. And even for Abby, Tyler goes, okay, I'm going to bring in another person, like another therapist in here, just in case, just to observe. We got to do this carefully because what happened with Tommy.
Yeah.
So you have a lot more precautions going on, a lot more, in this case, a lot more observers too, because you have Scott's wife in there and you have Abel in there as well, just trying to make sure they do this delicately of what actually is going on.
And so they do the second hypnosis, first one for him, and he starts to freak out and says, like, there's someone behind the door, they're opening the door, and then starts describing pretty much some sort of presence is like taking him away, and they snap him out of it, and he's just like, he talks about it just a little bit, where it's just like, it was aliens.
Yeah,
well,
at
not
this
really
point,
aliens,
this is when
but
I figured out what it was.
He didn't say aliens, but he says like it wasn't human.
Yeah, a lot of it is always like implied speech, how it was, just like it wasn't an owl. That's always the big thing at first. That isn't an owl. Again, also doing like the side-by-side video comparison where, Scott and the archival stuff is, honey, you got to wake up. Honey, you need to wake up. It's like, she's not waking up. She's not waking up. It's getting closer, whatever it is. Honestly, you can feel how terrified they are during a lot of these regression scenes, which is really well done. But yeah, it was around this moment, like the 41-minute marker, where Fangar just went, wait, this movie's about aliens? that just clicked right for him.
Listen, they were very subtle about it beforehand,
which I appreciated, and it essentially turns into, after this point is when they delve more into the alien aspect, because they probably thought this has to be the point when the audience realizes what's going on in the background. So it tied in perfectly, but it was still funny because you just went, wait a minute.
Yeah, no, it was very obvious after the fact. Especially go ahead.
Yeah. So as Scott and his wife leave, both Abby and Abel sort of have a moment to talk, and they were like, she's like, have you ever heard of alien abductions? And
Well, it
they sort of
was
talk
it
about that
was
for a second.
abduction theories.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily aliens at first. They're a light on that type of conversation until a later portion. But it was still like, do you believe in abduction theories? And Abel's going off, it's like, oh, you just mean, with kidnappings and stuff like this. Like, no, 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 no. And that's when they slowly delve further into that of, UFO sightings, all that stuff. Things going on in Nome, Alaska, which ties into an actual real life investigation the FBI did up in Alaska from the 1960s up to past 2000, which is what this whole movie, like the solution this movie gives for why the FBI was up there in the first place doing these missing people's investigation. This movie is essentially, well, what if it was this instead?
Yeah.
That can be delved into more later.
And so as they sort of leave her office, her assistant then is like, hey, you need to listen to your recording. And, like, leaves the room immediately. And
Interesting.
Just does not want to deal with it.
you hear her just talking normal on her own recording, and then it sounds like she's gone to sleep. And then you hear, like, the door, like, click open. And she starts to scream, and you hear, like, scratching and a foreign voice speak as she's just screaming, then silence.
Just full on bloody murder too.
And she's just like, oh, that's not me. That's not my voice. What is this? And
Yeah,
she like later that night, she like listens to herself over and over again until like she eventually sort of like looks at the evidence of what it might actually have been her, as she finds scratches on the floor of like her trying to like prevent herself from being dragged out from whatever it is. And she tries to understand like whatever words were said by whatever entity that might have been, but she can't understand it. She goes back to her husband's office and finds a book which has a phone number on it. And the phone number is for a speech doctor.
it is a Canadian professor dealing with ancient languages, mostly dealing in Sumerian. I'm going to try to attempt to pronounce the name, but
I believe in
please
you.
don't it. If I'm trying to look at this correctly, it should be Awulua Odusami, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Probably the best we're gonna get.
Yeah, no, I could not pronounce it any better.
AWOLOWA and then ODUSAMI. So I'd be like Awolowa Ulusami is probably the best we're gonna get.
Yeah, like son of a. I just realized too. If you look at the character's first name, it's spelled the same way front and backwards. I hate that.
Huh.
Why?
That's
Why?
a palindrome. But yeah, so she
I'm
calls
angry
him
now.
And he's just like, hello, and she's like, hey, do you know this person? No. And she hangs up, and he calls her back. It's just like, well, I knew this man that like called me once with this name, and he asked me a few questions, and she's like, that was my husband. Yeah. And then she tells him some things on the phone, and you don't even know what she's saying. It's probably like, hey, I heard I have a recording of some sort of language. I need you to transcribe that for me if you could. And he's like, okay. And he flies to Alaska. to like help her with the translations.
And at this point, we essentially find out that it is what is on the recorder is Sumerian, one of the first and oldest human languages to essentially be written down. It's not fully translated, but for a lot of ancient language, like researches and whatnot, that is considered the holy grail in a sense. Because I guess in one aspect, it would be like, we all know of the language program, the Rosetta Stone.
Yeah.
The Sumerian language would essentially be like the next best thing, or probably better, because it would, in theory, have like the root language of all other languages out there, considering it was like the first, as far as we know, the first human, or like, human civilization language that was out there. And from there, you could essentially have it branch off to everything else.
I think it was the lexicon, is what they said. The lexicon
Yes.
of languages?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not, they don't really have like a full translation of everything that's there, but they are still trying to figure it out.
Yeah. And so now we have the full crew sort of assembled at this point, between Abby, Abel, the doc. I'm just gonna call him the doctor. And they effectively at this point are sort of talking about the language on the recording, and he sort of translates it. I should have written down what they were translating, but effectively, like, some of it was like creation, ownership, God,
Research.
research.
The
Ruin,
God
destroy.
To be fair on that, the God portion doesn't really come until later on, but it's a lot like research, study, like erase, destroy, choice, little things like that. It's like, and the conclusion he comes up with, Abel is just trying to say is like, no, you probably just re-recorded over a previous tape. It's like, no, I don't do that. Everything is archived down and everything. I don't reuse tapes. It's like, well, what if you just use the voice modifier and all that? It's like, well, her voice is fine. But it still doesn't answer the fact of you have a like 6,000-year-old dead language being recorded in your bedroom
And spoken perfectly.
Yeah.
And then it just delves furthermore into like it just doesn't sound natural. The voice that is saying it's like, oh, like not human, like no. And Abel is clearly just not having any of this. Like we're not bringing aliens into this. There has to be a logical solution of what's going on here.
At this point in the movie, I was just like, I hope he gets kidnapped. And
Kidnapped and probed.
so, and basically immediately after that, they get a call from Scott's wife. She's like, yeah, you guys need to come down here. And it's like, okay, he's not going crazy. She's like, he is, but not like Tommy crazy. They're like, oh, okay. But they still come over.
Yeah, so Scott doesn't have a gun, but
And they
we're
get
just
here,
going
and
into
he's
incident number.
something Fenger pointed out, and you can point this out now if you'd like, when he's laying in bed.
Oh, about him being like full spread eagled in the previous, like in the rendition, like in the original
Archival
recording.
stuff.
Yeah, in the archival version, he was just like full spread eagle. It looked like he had just been like violently probed.
You were so offended because like he points this out. He's just like, well, okay, in the archival version, he's full spread eagle, but in the sort of the reenactment part, he's not spread eagle. This I find unfair. They should both be spread eagle, like they've been probed deeply for so long, and it's just like, is this part really that important to you?
No,
You were obsessed with that man's booty so hard.
Like he really
Listen,
needs the probe.
When the moment I heard about aliens, I was like, yeah, no, my mom went straight to like the Quagmire scene from Family Guy, and it was just like, yep, everyone's getting probed now. That makes so much sense. And in all fairness,
War.
like the way he reacted, you would have thought he actually was like traumatized by like something like that happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, covering up like a mark that was on his upper arm, just not really being scared mostly of just like I don't want to be put under hypnosis again, but there's something in here I have to remember. It's just dug in there. And just like how the actor portrayed all that was honest. Like Mila Jovovich, I'm sorry, I know she's like a good actress and whatnot, not, but she was outshined by all these other people.
Yeah.
She was outshined by this one dude alone. He like
Just
sold it.
like even I gotta also give credit to like a makeup department too, just able to give these people just that much of a sunken face look to it half the time of just full on distress talking about this kind of stuff was just really well done because they looked unkept, sweaty, and like they ain't slept in a week.
Yeah. And so at this point in the movie, he's just like, no, I don't want to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it because I need to talk about it. Put me under. Put me under, Doc. And so she does, and it goes like the normal ones where they're fine. Then they talk about the door being open. He's like, I didn't think about him tonight. I didn't think about him tonight.
If I can pull back on that a little bit, this one was a bit different in a sense because if I'm remembering correctly, it's like they put him under. You had Abby, Abel there, the doctor as well. Scott's wife is also in the same room or in the same bedroom.
Yeah.
As they're putting him, Scott under hypnosis in his bed. But in this go around, they put him under, and then they try, talking to him. Scott, what do you remember? Just not getting response right off the bat. And he's like, "Come on, Scott, are you there?" And then he just full on just sits up in the bed, just screeching. Not like a loud screech, but it more or less like something like he's getting squeezed, like something squeezing all the air out of him while just keeping his jaw open.
This one was like where shit hit the fans.
And he gets raised out of the bed at the same time.
Yeah, just starts levitating in a sense, and then Scott under this trance and everything as everyone else is trying to say, "Oh no, we gotta stop this." Scott, you're out of the hypnosis. 3, 2, 1. Wake up. You gotta wake up. He recording wise also hears that he's speaking Sumerian to Abby Tyler, essentially telling her what to just stop with your investigating, like stop all this hypnotism and all, like in general just saying stop, but in Sumerian. And then once that whole message gets conveyed through, he just gets slammed down back on the bed and like he got knocked out or something.
And then we learned that he broke his back.
About 3 vertebrae.
No, the aliens broke his back. That's why he was saying Fred Eagle.
Yeah.
As far as Sheriff August was concerned about it, it's like his back is broken, 3 vertebrae have been twisted. What the hell did you do? Because Abby is frantically, after this moment, just packing up her things, trying to get her kids to start packing up. It's like, "Mommy, where are we going? We're going to North Carolina, kids. Don't worry." It's like, what for? It's like, her son is like, "But I have a game tomorrow. What do you mean we have to move?" It's like, we're just going to move. Please help your sister. For the love of God, just help me out in this one moment.
Yeah, she's
because
like, ignore everything that we're just leaving. Okay, we're just gone.
And then the son just looks out the window, sees like all the cop cars coming. It's like, "Mom, what did you do?"
I thought that was a funny scene because it's like, oh yes, this is like a murder scene. Got it. But so yeah, the sheriff comes up, talks to her, is just like, "Hey, what did you do? And how did he break his back like this? How are you doing this stuff?" And Abel comes in, just like, no, I was there. She didn't do anything to him.
Well, they
There was
say
no
pretty
way
much like one of the most.
she could have done it because look at how big she is. You think she could have broken his back?
Or they just go with like one of the most famous lines in like scenarios like this. Always like, "I know what I saw."
Yeah.
That's just a constant thing at this point. It's like, "I know what I saw. I know what I saw." It's like, okay.
Hmm.
I'm not
And
crazy. I know
but the
what I saw.
sheriff, well, the sheriff is just like, calling this out as bullshit. Is like, you are the last person to interact with these people, and in his mind, it's basically one person is dead with his family, the other one now has a broken back. What are you doing? You are doing something to harm these people, and you need to stop. But
Yeah. At this
Abby
point,
is just like,
she gets put
there is a
under like house
connection.
arrest. Yeah.
She was going to get arrested until Abel was just like, look at her. She doesn't have the means to break a guy's back or something like that. Like, even he was just like, all right, what did you see exactly? It's like, it's not really something you can describe.
You wouldn't
And
believe me if I told you. You gotta trust
well,
me.
another thing I appreciate is the fact that they actually talk about, why don't you just look at the footage? It's like we have the footage, but it got corrupted somehow. One of the things you would always think about, like in a paranormal setting of, you caught it on film, why don't you just show them? They're going to believe it. It's like, but for the archival stuff, it's always just, here's the footage, and then it just gets heavily corrupted to where you can't even tell what's going on. Which, honestly, was thankful at that point, because a lot of that stuff, they rarely bring up. You have the person recording all this stuff, and when you try to tell someone, hey, you got to believe me, I'm seeing this, your obvious first thing is, see, I recorded it, here you go. And this one at least acknowledges something like that of, I recorded it, but it's corrupted. You got to believe me on this.
You gotta believe me, officer.
I
Also
did not
for-
do it.
Please, Mr. Officer, sir.
I did not hit him. I did not.
Oh, hi, Mark. So yeah, I mean, realistically, at this point, he puts her under house arrest. Says, yeah, you try to touch the door to leave, and you will be arrested. I will not take your kids right now, but we're gonna investigate this. And he walks out and posts someone to like watch, and she goes to sleep that night with the kids, and the officer is just like, time to drink some coffee. Gonna turn on my camera. Gonna sit here and watch this house tonight. And it's just like 3:33 a.m. Huh? What's that? He gets out of the car, walks out. There's something floating above the house. They're taking them. They're taking them.
Yeah, and this perspective is the police dash cam, as we're getting, as it mentions, the quote unquote archival police like radio recording.
Yeah.
Of you, I don't know how to explain. Like, they're being pulled, they're pulling something's up there. Family's getting pulled up there. And the officer that's just out there afterwards, just like, oh my God, you gotta send people here now. Something just happened. And it runs into the same scenario. Sheriff August shows up. I believe the deputy that was outside was called Ralph.
Yeah.
Yeah, Deputy Ryan. Sorry.
Oh, close enough.
So just starts with an R. But, Sheriff August is like, Ryan, what did you see exactly? It's like, I don't know. It's like, well, what about the camera? It got corrupted. It didn't record anything. It's like, bullshit. You got to pull yourself. Because that's the second or third time they pretty much mentioned that. It's like, what about the camera? It's like, it recorded, but it's all corrupted type thing. It's like, this is starting to be bullshit. What's going on?
Yeah,
Which
the
is why
sheriff is done with
Sheriff
his shit
August.
at this point. He's just done with everything at this point. He like sort of like walks into the house. You hear Abby crying. He's like, "What happened here?" She's like, "They took my baby. She's gone." And he's just like, "Bullshit. Well, where is she?" He's just
Yeah,
so
and then, like,
done.
freaking
He's just so
smashes,
done with
like,
Abigail.
Yeah, no, and
Yeah.
he smashes a freaking mirror with a chair.
Well, and to be fair in his aspect, as far as what his character is going through, you now have a missing child. For a lot of like officers, especially dealing with like missing kids and whatnot, with a quote unquote deranged parent, is probably one of the worst things to deal with, because then you are more than likely looking for a body at that point. And for a lot of cops and everything, that's not really something you want to walk up on.
Yeah.
It just having to find a body in general, but it hits more whenever it is a child being hurt like this.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as they're concerned, is like, your daughter is now missing. What the hell did you just do? I just put you on house arrest, and now your 7-year-old is missing. And as far as you're telling me, you're just saying there was a beam of light that just sucked her up through the ceiling. This is bullshit. What did you do?
Yeah. And at this point, he takes away her other child.
Granted, the asshole kid, but I mean,
Yeah. And then he's just like, you better figure this out. Better tell me where she is. And he leaves. She invites both Abel and the doctor over so she can put herself under regression at this point. She's just like, this is the only way to get my child back.
even though Abel was just like, after the incident with Sky, is like, I don't want to basically acknowledge what I saw in that incident. Please don't make me do this again. Because he's dealing, in a sense, with that trauma in a different way. It's like, I know what I saw, I just don't want to acknowledge it, or else I'm just going to have nothing but questions throughout the rest of my life. But she just slowly convinces him, it's like, this is the only way. In theory, I have to get in contact with them. So far, the only way we've shown that we can get into contact with them is doing a regression. I need to do this to figure out what's going on.
So he puts her under, and she starts like contorting and like floating, and basically she's like demanding for her daughter back. And her body contorts more, and it's just like, at one point it says something like, I am God or something on that.
Yeah, that's where you would get that
That's what it
line
was.
when she's just trying to plead. It's just, I want my baby back. It's like, no, my child now. Like, in the broken up like caption or translations that they're giving up, a lot of the words are still unknown, but that big thing at the end is legitimately just, I am, and then blank, 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 God.
Yeah. And so basically at this point, it sort of looks like everyone was abducted that was in that room. And we wake up on the final scene where she's in like this weird cast for her legs. She has a neck brace, and the sheriff is sitting there. And I'll let you finish this story off, Caveman, if you'd like.
As far as what she said, after this incident, it took her a couple days to wake up. And as they're sitting down there, you hear the like medical machines beeping, just slowly pumping in blood for her and everything. And she's not fully there after she woke up, but it's still just like, what's going on? Because Abel walks in, the sheriff's right there too, with a document from the sheriff's office. It's like, okay, well, what exactly is going on? And even Sheriff August is just like, I know, I'm really sorry, like, in the condition that you're in and all that, but I have to show you this so you can finally stop. And it's like, okay, sure, and pretty much shows her. As far as her whole motivation, remember, was that her husband was murdered in front of her while they were sleeping, stabbed right in the chest, as far as what she remembers. The sheriff pulls up and is like, here's a picture of her husband with an obvious like bullet wound in the head. Here is the gun that he shot himself with as he was laying right next to your bed. He wasn't murdered, he committed suicide. So as far as he's concerned, whatever your delusions are, It's not real. We found the murderer. He murdered himself. And she's trying to essentially cope with this, saying, no, we're both therapists. I would have known what was going on in his head and all this stuff. There's no way something like this. And Abel is trying to comfort her in a way, but just be like, there may have been something that he knew, but didn't want to tell anybody. You don't, at the end of the day, you don't really know what happens to inside someone's head. And then it essentially just ends with Sheriff August just asking, I'm going to ask you one more time, what happened to Abigail? And then she still is affirmed on that whole thing, even though she was taken by them. And he just goes like on a bit of a monologue, but it's just sort of heartbroken in a sense of just saying, you've gone insane. And there's no coming back from it at this point.
Yeah.
I believe that was pretty much it for the movie.
That was pretty much
then
it. And then it goes into like, what they did after and all that. And it was just like, why should you think the audience should believe you here? And she's just like, well, there are facts. Abigail's missing. Those recordings happened. These people, there's obviously evidence that people are missing from this town. And there's the issue with people sleeping. And this is hard facts. This isn't like anything skeptical, and that's why this is an issue in this town. And they zoom out, they showed that like her legs were just broken at this point, and she was in a wheelchair.
she had to be in a wheelchair after the incident and all that stuff.
She had her back broken by God.
In theory, because she even explains it like too. It's like whatever the feeling of that entity is not really something she could describe. She couldn't really call it God in a sense, but it could be something that can easily pretend to be God with what it was doing. Because as it all ties into the end, you had Mila Jovovich talking about this, the individual they had interviewing the quote unquote real Abby Tyler that they had at the beginning, little snippets of it throughout the film, and then at the end, all going over as something I mentioned previously of you had incidences from the 1960s up to about the early 2000s that the FBI had to go investigate missing cases, like missing people cases up in Alaska. Nome had about over 2,000, and then Anchorage had about 300 and some visits.
Yeah, but Anchorage is like 76 times the size of the population.
Well, 7.
No, they said it was like they said it was like 76 times the population. Yeah, like but by comparison, Anchorage is a huge city.
Yeah.
But to essentially tie it all together, what they explain is legitimately something that you can look up, and is something that did happen. Of a lot of missing cases in Alaska in general did take place. FBI did go up there to try to figure out what was going on with all these missing people. This movie ties into a lot of quote-unquote conspiracy theories around what exactly is going on, especially in remote areas. You can build up a lot of, hey, what if, either some sort of creature out there, some sort of, thing up in the sky, government, conspiracy, all this stuff. Like, why is the FBI out there? The unfortunate for a lot of these people, the conclusion behind all of this was the reason people kept going missing, especially in a lot of these remote areas, sort of built into the fact that a lot of these places were isolated. So majority of the reason that these people would just end up going missing is they would either just get tired of the life that they had, wander out into the snow and just die while they're trying to get somewhere, or the other realistic choice was it's just people getting drunk and then just wandering out into the snow and wilderness and then just ending up dying there because of hypothermia. It's because of a lot of these areas being so isolated that sadly boredom and alcoholism is the leading cause. That was the solution of what was actually going on. This movie hints at some of that in a little bit, but it's also like a what if scenario of, what could possibly go on, because that is one of the theories going into it. And it does, like, throughout the movie, they deal with a lot of superstitions, you know, if you want to think of it more like, black magic, witchcraft, superstition stuff going on. Again, big thing with always the 3:33 witching hours thing. I'm honestly, well, sort of glad in one aspect they didn't delve too far into something like that to try to pull a red herring.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sort of good how it still pulls a lot of that stuff. The big motif with owls. The owls is always looking at me. That's another aspect of either any sort of folklore that different Aborigine tribes up there would talk about, dealing with owls being the messenger of the gods and all that stuff, can easily tie into something like this, or with, alien conspiracy theories of owls falling into that as well. Overall, this is why I sort of like the movie like this, because it didn't show the alien, which was honestly great. Whenever there was incidents or recollections going on or anything, they could easily have just done something like that. But instead, they just went with a more like everything's hazy and you don't see anything. All of it gets implied afterwards.
Like Cloverfield.
Well, yes and no, because towards the end of it, they pretty much just showed what the creature looked like. In this one, like in one of
saw
the
shadows,
and you could barely tell, like, if they were supposed to be alien beings or not, because it was just a black mass that would go forward. Like, whenever she gets hypnotized and whatnot, she can clearly, from her perspective, is like she gets up from bed, looks around, everything's still hazy, looks at the door, and it just slowly swings open. You would expect, typical horror trope, something's going to be there, but it's not. It's just an empty hallway, and then just a black mass just comes out of nowhere, just swings around the bed. So it honestly does a really good job of that, of just leaving the tension up there and just not showing anything that's happening.
all right, I will
Even
review.
within,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
well, I was just gonna say, even with like the hypnosis regressions with Tommy and Scott, it doesn't delve too much into it, but it's, as far as what they keep going, it's like they're freaking out, and the only thing that they can really say over and over again is just, that wasn't an owl. There's no way that was an owl. You sort of trying to comprehend what you're looking at, but you can't describe it.
Yeah.
Which obviously leads to the tension going on of even, the realization afterwards of what Fengar is like, could this just be, a supernatural being or something going after this town or the people or some sort of like creature or anything? Because it leaves it vague enough until that moment, and then it dives further into it.
I still would love to see an owlbear fight alien god.
Just go watch the D&D movie then.
All right, Fengar. Give it a rating from 0 to 5 abductions, and also give a sort of mini review on what you thought about the sound design, because I want to hear your idea on that.
Okay, so for my rating, I give it 7 anal probes out of 10.
God damn it.
Right.
I think it was a good movie. It was interesting. I did think that, like, for instance, the way, in terms of sound, I liked the split audio. I did not like the fact that the main audio was just so damn quiet, though. Like, it just seemed like the guy holding the freaking boomstick was just too far back from them in a lot of scenes. In that, like, and in the split recording ones, it was fine. But the problem was that some of the people sounded louder in the archival footage, and I thought that was a little bit of a you know, of an issue,
Yeah.
but I still enjoyed the movie. It took me way too long to realize that it was about fucking aliens, but but it
How long
was.
is how long was the movie supposed to be anyway?
It's an hour and a half long. It took me almost halfway to realize it's about aliens.
Did he say
Yeah.
41 minutes?
Yeah.
That's more than
41
Yeah.
minutes. No, 45 minutes would have been halfway.
So as far as for me, I would probably give it. Since this was the second time I've seen this movie, I would probably give it a 4 out of 5. Um, Realistically, I really instead of paying attention to the story as much, the sound was it was
No.
a very very clever use to use the left and the right side for sounds, just so you could hear both sides happening simultaneously or it fading back and forth. You also saw on the screen where like one part would be more dominant when they're talking, it would actually slide and make that side bigger, so you could it focused your attention to that one scene that was happening, because the other one it was still happening, just not as prevalent, or it showed you the dominating frame. I liked the use of the shadows as part of the visuals. I thought that was very, very clever, well designed. I think that the director did a fantastic job overall on the movie. The plot had a little bit to be desired, but I don't think it was enough to admonish the movie for its efforts. And especially since this is a pseudo documentary, I thought that, like, the first time I watched it with no background or anything, I thought they did a good job on trying to convince you that it was based off of a real event and that all this stuff had happened. So, because it had convinced me the first time through, is why I'm giving it such a decent score.
Oh yeah, no, I thought it was a legit documentary. Like, no, okay, well, obviously not entirely legit, but I thought it was like the archival stuff. I thought that was a legit, like, from an actual documentary.
Yeah. And
Well,
Cayman, if you
okay.
want to give your opinion on it, you can go from there.
Obviously for a movie like this is one of my personal. I know I've said that for a few times, but this legitimately is one of my personal favorite movies because of the presentation that it has. I bought this on YouTube. This is something I go back and watch from time to time because I just appreciate it. It's really well done, minus, a lot of the whispering thing, like audio wise, that goes on. It gets a little bit irritating, but the story still keeps you going on. And I honestly appreciate stuff like that. And once watch it, you look into it, that's when, that big twist happens of, yes, the reenactment stuff isn't real, but even the archival footage isn't real as well. Because that is its own separate portion of actors doing that. So this is a movie that they had to record twice. Once for all the archival footage so that they can use for side to side stuff. And then they had to use that first recording as a reference for the reenactment stuff. Whereas, you get a lot of these horror mockumentaries and pseudo documentaries trying to say, this is real. Here's just, a camcorder recording of it or CCTV recordings of the events that's going on. This just takes it the extra step by essentially just trying to present itself as like what you're about to watch. This is just reenactment stuff. What we are doing is fake. What this other stuff that we recorded beforehand, that is the real portion that we actually did, but it still falls into that whole thing of that was recorded as well. And it really works on whenever it presents it to people, because then they try to look it up. Some got angry about it because I thought this was real and all that stuff, when finding out the archive footage had its own separate set of actors that went into it to portray it. So I really got to give props to the director that essentially wanted to do something like that to sort of stand out in the crowd of all that found footage horror stuff. And I guess ending off with like a little fun fact, if you do look up who the director of this movie is, it is the same guy doing the initial interview with Abby Tyler, which I think that's really fun. I'm going to try to pronounce his name as well. Let's see how well this works out. Olatunde Unsun Sumni. If you look up this movie on IMDb, I'm pretty sure I butchered that completely, but you'll be able to find the director and all that. He does a lot of other good work too, but thought that was a nice little feature. He was basically the guy at the beginning doing the interview.
Oh, that was the director.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a cool little self insert.
Right.
Yeah, it's not something that's done too excessively, like with a certain other director that likes to insert themselves into all their movies, but it's just something subtle enough where he's just there. In a way, you could just say he's there just getting the information for the story of the movie he's going to make, if you want to think of it like that.
Based on the knowledge that you gathered from us talking about it, Lunar, what do you think?
I'm sorry, my cat was here. What you say?
I said, based on the knowledge
Got
of
it.
what we talked about for the movie, what do you think about it?
You need a brain cell to know that it's aliens in there.
You don't really need a brain cell. You just need to know, oh, this is what the movie is called. This is what it's about.
Listen, I don't deal with that much, like, in terms of alien abductions. I don't.
That's true. You're more in the supernatural category, like, honestly.
I'm more
I
into
understand.
supernatural rather than extraterrestrial.
It still deals with supernatural. What are you talking about?
Listen, I didn't look into.
The only thing supernatural uncle deals with is phasmophobia.
Yeah.
All right.
You're the one wanting, like, anal probes and all that stuff. Just step into my little office right here. We can talk more.
What did I miss in the conversation that had to be brought up?
Just make sure you bring the tacos and box wine. And
I
you'll
have
be all
I have
good.
tacos.
Ooh, now we're talking.
Mhm.
But all right, so we'll wrap it up here. I thank everyone for listening in. Thank you again for Ence being supportive to us. If you want to give us recommendations or talk to us, we have a Discord called Ence Gaming Public.
Yes.
You can find us there. You can type in Ence Gaming on Google. It's encegaming.com.
Look for the ferret. Look for the ferret.
And once you click on encegaming.com, we have our Discord there. We have everything. We have our Patreon. So please support us in any way you can, and we'd be more than glad to talk and hang out.
Just saying, guys, you should talk about what your favorite horror movies are, or anything like pop culture. It doesn't have to be movies. It could be stories, lore, anything like that. And these guys might be like, I don't know what that is, but we might want to talk about it, or be like, oh, I forgot about that. Go ahead, pique their interest.
Yeah, essentially like stories, movies, animes, mangas,
Action
online
figures.
series.
Don't actually send in pictures of creepy things, please don't.
I might force Fengar to read a book one of these times.
Please do. I'll be interested in that.
I've never learned how to read.
Well,
Kidding.
I already knew that. You didn't. You couldn't read the fourth kind.
Might have to do a audiobook for you, but we'll work it out. But thank you everyone for joining us.
Just get him a Nickelodeon show. He'll be fine.
And
Listen, I actually love like Fairly Odd Parents and SpongeBob.
That is horror right there. The Fairly Odd Parents.
So I get to choose the actual next movie, and I was thinking that we watch a movie called Come and See. Actually,
Hide and Seek?
Giggity.
no, Come and See. It is a very interesting film.
Go on.
Oh my no! Oh god!
Yep.
That okay? Yo, you're gonna love this. Yep.
It's a anti-war film, directed by Ellen Klimov. Basically, a majority of the film, there's no music. It's very ambient. Realistically, it wasn't supposed to be scary, but because of the ambiance and the themes, it is fairly terrifying as it involves the invasion of Belarus during 1943 by the Germans.
Can you imagine you try to make movies like I want to do this movie, it's being inspired, and then you look at it and it ends up the horror section. What did I do? What
It,
went wrong?
Well, they consider it like I said, it's supposed to be like based off of true events. It has hyperrealism, surrealism, but because it's so real, and because like all this stuff did happen, um, and you see the main character sort of change throughout the movie, is the true horror of behind the moment, and we'll definitely talk more about it when we actually do the recording and all that. But it's just something that I wanted to bring to the table, and it's definitely something that needs to be talked about. Um, so I hope that you'll come in next time and listen to us. And thanks so much, and you guys take care.